Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to First Parish, Unitarian Universalists of Arlington.
We choose.
We choose.
We choose to be
A liberal religious community.
Welcoming.
Welcoming to all.
We encourage each other
on our spiritual journeys.
Support one another
through the changes in our lives.
And challenge the excesses
and injustices of our time.
Called to love.
To love.
To love.
And upheld by joy.
We live our faith.
Today, we come together with many thoughts and feelings. The present moment has had so much change and disruption to what many have thought was a secure, normal state. I invite you to put your hands in your lap, align your spine, and remember what security feels like for you and your body. And then, where does the tension lie? Great giver of wisdom, we can feel how things have changed in our bodies. We can feel the cool breeze outside, slowly blowing the leaves from the trees. Many of us have adjusted the blankets on the bed to help keep us warm. Others have changed over from cooler summer meals to the warmer soups and baking of autumn. This fall has been different for many of us here. Even among the wonder and beauty, there are many different feelings that can come with a change in orientation. Whether it has been changes in the structure of our daily lives, the loss of beloved members over the past year, the retirement of our previous minister. Things do feel different for many, and are indeed. Kind listener, help us to be together with each other. We are still ourselves, still a loving and powerful community, even as the circumstances around us change. Help us loosen our hold on who we believe we are, and guide us to who we can choose to be. Remind us that our time together is a sacred memory, and that as time moves us forward, we may also provide that sacred space for others as well. Let us now enjoy those sacred moments together in 2 minutes of silence.
Back in the 1980s, there was a TV show that was supposed to be based here in the Boston area. Some of you might have seen it. It was called Cheers. And there's a character in this show named Norm, and whenever he would enter the room, everybody would yell, Norm! I see some of you have seen this show, while others of you might not have even been born yet during the 1980s, right? And the theme for this show is sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. Indeed. Wow, this crowd gets an A for knowing your 1980s TV shows. And indeed, Cheers, the bar, is a place where you could go whenever you're experiencing trouble in your life and whenever the world is falling apart all around you. And it is what we now call and what we now know as a third space. The first space, as we all may know, is our home. And usually the second place is our workplace, right? And so the question is, where do we go whenever we're experiencing trouble at home or trouble at work? Is there a more neutral space where we could feel a sense of belonging? A place where we could just go and everybody would welcome us with open arms and a great big hug, telling us everything will be okay. Well, unfortunately, since the 1980s, the sense of cohesiveness of society has declined. I don't know if you all have noticed, but there's a rise in the sense of isolationism within our country, which is quite ironic because, at some point, Al Gore invented the internet, right? And that was supposed to bring us together from all over the world, the World Wide Web. And again, at some point, the social media platforms were born. And that too was supposed to foster connection and relationships and allow us to connect with our relatives and friends from near and far. And yet, here we are with higher rates of depression than ever before. A couple of decades ago, he's still alive, a Quaker educator and activist by the name of Parker Palmer. He wrote a book called Let Your Life Speak. How many of you have read that book? All right, a few of you. So you may recall that in the book, he talked about his burnout from all his years of activism and how nothing seemed to have helped during that period of burnout. Not the platitudes that he was given, not even seeing a therapist. The only thing that gave him comfort was his friend who came to visit him. And his friend didn't really have any super wise words to say, but rather just held his hand or washed his feet, just being there for him and just being a presence. Parker Palmer says, here's how he defines depression. He says, depression is the ultimate state of disconnection. It deprives one of the relatedness that is the lifeline of every living being. So depression is a form of disconnection. The question for us as a congregation here at First Parish, as that third space, is how can we foster connection and engagement with every single person that walks in through our doors or clicks in to join our Zoom rooms? And I have two suggestions for us as antidotes to the sense of isolation that we are experiencing. I propose that in order to be engaged, there are two ways. One is to make a friend. And I'm not just talking about the superficial kind of friend, but the one that George Odell mentions in our reading today of how we need one another when we are mourning and need to be comforted. We need one another when we are in trouble. We need one another when we're feeling like there's no one else around who could possibly help with what we are going through. We need one another as much as Parker Palmer needed his friend to be present with him during his most difficult times of feeling like he's out of relationship and disconnected from the rest of the world. These are times when we need one another. Can I get an amen to that? Amen. Which is part of why the rally yesterday was so energizing, right? Seeing a bunch of people who are going through the same thing that we are and who share the same values that we do. Saying no to tyranny, saying no to an oppressive system that threatens to divide us from one another. How we need one another day in and day out. And you know what? It's not that easy anymore to try to find a place where you could be totally accepted for who you are. And it's difficult to find it, believe it or not, in such a large setting as this one for only 1 hour a week, or 1.5 hours sometimes, right? So where do we foster those relationships? I have a few suggestions. I mean, one of them, believe it or not, I just heard this past week that they became a member and they knew that First Parish was for them when they were standing in the receiving line waiting to shake the minister's hands. Because it takes a lot of patience, first of all, to stand in that line, right? And you're kind of forced at some point to talk to the person standing in front of you or behind you. And you never know if they're a newcomer, for example, right? Wearing those blue stickers that we have. And this person said that I was standing in line and the person in front of me was saying, I'm a practicing Buddhist, and yet I come to this church as well because it feeds my spiritual needs. And my family is a queer family. And this person happens to also be queer and thought, wow, if they are accepted and welcomed here, I must be accepted and welcomed here as well. So what a great place to make that connection. And during fellowship time, believe it or not, you are one of the friendliest congregations in New England. So much for being frozen chosens, right? Even though at least 70% of you are introverted. As is the case with most of you congregations that I've served, by the way, right? So you go above and beyond to seek out those who are new, knowing that at some point you were that person, seeking connection and a place of belonging. And guess what? What's the magic number, you would guess, of how big of a group there is so that you could foster a meaningful and deep relationship? Not 70, but let me give you a hint. It's not the over 200 present here in our worshiping space and in our meeting house right now, and it's not the over 50 or 60 connections that we have on Zoom. Getting back to that bar named Cheers, notice that at any given moment, there's only about 12 or 15 people in that bar, right? And that's how they got to know everybody's names. And guess which other group is limited to 12 to 15? Covenant groups. That's right. Wow. Somebody's been paying attention to what's going on here in the congregation. Yes, and it takes place in Lectio Divina, right? There's a deepening there for those who participate. And it takes place with affinity groups. By the way, did you know that we not only have a men's group in this congregation, we also have an older men's group, right? I don't know what the age limit is, but it's like, well, that's great that we not only have one men's group, but we have two. And if we were to form a women's group or a non-binary group, like how many other affinity groups could we have, right? And we have an LGBTIQ+ affirming committee and so on and so forth. So there's so many ways that we could deepen our relationship because these are the people that we could call at 3 o'clock in the morning whenever an accident happens and we need a ride to the emergency room, for example, right? So there are so many avenues where we could foster a deeper sense of engagement. So the second way that we could get engaged is by finding a job. And not just as a religious professional, although that's fabulous as well, like myself, but also by joining a committee. Now, I know whenever I do the survey of how many of you wanted to join a congregation like ours because you couldn't wait to sign up for a committee. Raise your hand. But the byproduct of it, when you do finally eventually work your way into joining a committee, is that you develop friendships with members of that committee because our committees are less than 12 to 15 people, right? For the most part. And we just had a worship associates training yesterday, and there was such deep conversation and camaraderie there. There were even tears shed, you know, like we ran out of Kleenex in our room, right? Because there's such a a deep sense of we are in this together, and that what we're doing is a spiritual deepening of our work. Can I get an amen for the worship associates, right? that is part of your spiritual practice, and that is what allows you to grow in this place as you are giving back to the world. How do you find out which committee to join? Because there is a gazillion committees in First Parish, right? When Project Engage was being launched, a big shout out to Amy and Susan for putting or spearheading this effort, and they came up with a list. I almost got overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my gosh, are people's eyes gonna gloss over with all the choices of committees that they could join? And I thought, well, why don't we scale it back a little bit and first ask the question of what is your superpower, right? And your superpower, what you're interested in and what brings you life, may not necessarily be what you're doing for a living at the moment. So for example, if you are an accountant or a financial consultant in your day job, you might not necessarily want to be the church treasurer. Even though Carolyn, our current treasurer, would really appreciate you taking over after she terms out next year. But you may want to join the choir because that's your other interest, right? And so it's a matter of just trying to figure out what makes you come alive. The Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman, an African-American minister of the Church for All Peoples in the Bay Area, has a very popular quote. He says, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it." The world needs people who have come alive, right? That's what the world needs. And so what would make you come alive? And at some point, it's also a question of after you get burned out by doing that forever and a day. I'm so glad, by the way, that we instituted term limits finally, right? So that people could have permission to cycle off if they need to. And don't worry, if you cycle off though, we'll find you another job. Because again, there's so many opportunities out there. Just after the service, talk to our Project Engage folks, and you have all these handouts in front of you, right? That you could just check out and scan the QR code for. So there's so many things to do here because there is so much work that needs to be done in order to fulfill our mission. And the whole thing about this, if you take a look at it, is the next question then leads to how do you make the best use of your superpower, and how do you share your gift in order to build beloved community? And let me tell you what, this is truly countercultural in US culture, where we have a mentality out there of what's in it for me, how can you serve me? And we have this serve us, SERVE-US, versus service. Notice the difference, right? That one is all about how do you meet my needs versus how do I meet your needs? And how could we be in community together? To paraphrase JFK, ask not what First Parish could do for you. Ask what you can do for First Parish. Another Bostonian, right? Although I don't quite have the accent down yet, I apologize. So how could we engage in that mindset of being in service to one another? That's the question I have for you today. So remind me again, what are the two ways that we could get engaged and connected here at First Parish? Everybody needs a friend and a job. All right. So getting back to our friend Norm, while everybody has a place here, you belong here simply because you are here, right? I invite you to take it to the next level and not just be comfortable sitting on a bar stool. I invite you to actually get engaged and take your faith to the next level so that you can become truly alive here in place, because that is indeed what the world needs now. Amen.